Part 106. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1056. Yuri is a very ruthless person. In order to control the world in Red Alert World, he even sacrificed half of the civilians in Red Alert World. But now, seeing Wang Ling using the infantry of his Soul Empire as cannon fodder, he felt very unhappy. Of course, if you are unhappy, why should you let Wang Ling be the host? He could only accept his fate with a dark face. Beside him, Tanya was gloating about her misfortune. I said, Yuri, we are all programs, and these infantry were all killed by Wang Ling. What's wrong with redeeming them now? Are you so stingy? Humph, Yuri still had a dark face, obviously not listening. Swish. 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 In the real world, on the Wild Valley Islands, those black whirlpools were still appearing one after another, and a large number of Soul Empire soldiers came out of them, which lasted for a long time before ending. During this period, the Soul Empire infantry who appeared on the islands, altogether, there were 500 people. There is a big gap between the number of soldiers in the Red Alert world and the real world. These 500 people in the Red Alert world are more than the total strength of the entire Yuri base. But these 500 people are only a small part of the infantry of the Soul Empire that Wang Ling can summon. This shows how seriously he destroyed the Soul Empire when fighting in the Red Alert world. Oh ho ho ho. I'm alive again. Haha, it turns out I'm just a program. It's true, it's rare to come back alive again, and you still have to fight. 500 infantry were exchanged in one breath, and the combat area of both hosts became a bit crowded in an instant. These various types of infantry from the Soul Empire that were already dead landed on the ground, received the memory infusion from the system, and knew their identities. By the way, they also knew after seeing the current battle situation. A group of wild orcs shouted excitedly. Yuri's recruits showed different expressions, some were excited and some complained, while the virus snipers and psychic troops stared at the target enemy without saying a word. Language. This madman actually exchanged 500 people for it in one breath. 500. So many. Good guy. On the other hand, Teacher Li Dong's eyelids twitched when the 20 martial arts characters who were exchanged saw the scale of the exchange at first sight. But Teacher Li Dong was very calm and shouted, "Don't mess up your position, these are just miscellaneous soldiers, they are not at the same level as us. Form up and respond to the enemy. Drink." Following the order, 20 martial arts figures quickly arranged themselves in an orderly manner, surrounding Teacher Li Dong in the middle, forming an inner and outer circle. They blocked their weapons in front of them, and half of their shuttle-shaped protective shields appeared. It formed a two-layer defensive formation that looked like a turtle shell. It can be seen that these 20 martial arts characters are all trained by Teacher Li Dong. Looking at the half-protective shields, they have at least been injected with intermediate enhancement, which is the same level as Sun Dehu and others. Attack. After the defensive formation was formed, Wang Ling issued the attack order without haste, and the 500 infantrymen ran together and rushed towards the defensive formation from 3 directions. Choo choo choo. Choo choo choo. The first to fire was the virus sniper at the rear. Relying on its ultra-long range, the virus sniper bullets directly passed through the group of soldiers in front and hit the outer protective shield. However, the power of this virus bullet shooting at the protective shield is very limited. When it hits it, it only makes a ding sound and there is no further explanation. Then came the army of Yuri recruits approaching from the front, firing divine flames in groups and attacking the protective barrier. Quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. Under the attack of groups of mental flames, rapid ripples appeared on the outer protective shield. The martial arts figures maintaining the protective shield behind also gritted their teeth, as if they were under a lot of pressure. Whoa whoa. Hoo ho ho, what are these translucent things? They look annoying, smash them. As the vanguard, the Wild Orcs troops also arrived in front of the defensive formation at this time. The movement of their huge bodies was quite eye-catching. Phoenix Feather. In the defensive formation, the martial arts personnel in the formation could only defend passively, but Teacher Li Dong, who was the leader of the formation, could move freely. Before the group of wild orcs could swing their fists, he had already taken out his dagger and released the ultimate killing move spreads out a continuous wave of impact in all directions. This kind of impact was so lethal that even Wang Ling didn't dare to ignore it and could only passively avoid it, let alone this group of infantry. The shock wave cleverly bypassed all the martial arts figures and rushed into the infantry group of the Soul Empire. It was as if endless sword energy swept across, knocking all the infantrymen off their feet. Everyone was swept away by this powerful sword energy. His body was covered with bruises and blood mist filled the air. As ordinary infantrymen of the Soul Empire, how could these people withstand such injuries? After falling to the ground, all vitality was lost, and the body gradually disappeared. The originally crowded battlefield now seemed much quieter in an instant. In contrast, the martial arts characters arrayed in array felt a bit unreal. Even Tu Cheng was still sarcastically saying, although there are many people, they are all miscellaneous soldiers and are vulnerable to a single blow. Really? If there are too many ants, they can kill an elephant. Do you believe that if there are too many soldiers, they can crush you to death? When Wang Ling heard this, he sneered, and then began to exchange for Soul Empire infantry on a large scale. This time, Wang Ling simply did not set an upper limit. Infantrymen appeared one after another, and the number soon exceeded 500, but still there is no ending trend. These infantrymen had no intention of gathering at all. They had already received orders as soon as they appeared and rushed towards the defensive formation without fear of death. This kind of quantity made those martial arts characters feel dizzy, and even Tu Cheng shut his mouth. Dive down and explode the headlights. Teacher Li Dong simply took out the sledgehammer and responded with his ultimate killing move. He jumped 5 meters high, rotated 720 degrees in the air, and then suddenly smashed the yellow glow sledgehammer towards ground. Boom! This hammer was so shocking that the whole island seemed to tremble for a moment. The huge momentum was exquisitely controlled. It did not specifically destroy the land. Instead, the rolling shock wave spread in all directions, and was cleared in an instant. More than 800 infantrymen were killed and the place was cleared. Good guy, this stimulation is more efficient than me. Wang Ling couldn't help but smacked his lips when he saw the cleaning speed, but this is not enough. Let's see if you have more physical strength or I have more points. Swish. 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 With a sinister smile, the infantry figures of the Soul Empire continued to cross out of the large number of black vortexes below, quickly filling the original vacant range. Why are there so many? According to your temperament, these are definitely not your subordinates, but infantry of the hostile forces, right? Teacher Li Dong cleared 2 rounds in succession, but he also became a little irritated. According to the rules of the system, unless they were killed by you or your forces, otherwise there would be no way to redeem them from the hostile forces. How many people have you killed in the game world? Wang Ling was always flying in the air, crossing his arms and smiling. Teacher, the red alert world is a war world. I will not be soft on the enemy. The number of infantry I can exchange for is probably more than you think. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1057. Swish. 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 While Wang Ling was speaking, the exchange was still going on, and a large number of black vortexes emerged, from which densely packed Soul Empire infantry walked out. These infantrymen were really just cannon fodder. They were wiped out by Teacher Li Dong's skills, which was just a waste of physical strength. Although he knew this, seeing thousands of infantrymen being wiped out with his own eyes, Yuri in the transfer station was still full of anger. Wang Ling, You are so cruel. Tanya has always been gloating. Oh, Yuri, this doesn't seem to be your temperament. For your ambition, you killed many more people than Wang Ling. Why are you so stingy now? Be generous. Anyway, in the red alert world, these infantrymen are already dead. As soon as the words came to this, Tanya suddenly got stuck, because among the infantrymen who came out of the black vortex, the allied infantry actually began to appear, advancing hand in hand with the Seoul Empire infantry. Wang Ling, it's your uncle's. Just now he was burying Yuri, but at this moment, even Tanya couldn't help but cursed. However, Sun Dehu and other members of the coalition forces looked at each other, and no one gloated for a moment. Who knows if this cheap Wang Ling will use coalition forces later? Change the formation. On the island in the real world, Wang Ling's almost rogue style of play really gave teacher Li Dong a headache. He gritted his teeth and simply changed the defensive formation. This defensive array originally had 2 layers, but the number of miscellaneous soldiers exchanged by Wang Ling was large in quantity but insufficient in quality. Even the first layer of protective shield could not be broken. As a result, the martial arts in the inner layer were responsible for supporting the protective shield. The characters all released their defenses and were divided into several directions, using long-distance attack moves to deal with the enemy, in order to reduce the pressure on teacher Li Dong. Rush. Kill. Ah. Those infantry of the Seoul Empire and allied forces exchanged in batches are not afraid of death at all under orders, and they charge with great momentum, but often they can only rush within a few dozen meters of the defensive formation before they are greeted by billowing sword energy. The impact makes it difficult to get close. Even if you fire from a distance and focus fire, you can't break through those protective shields at all. The Allied infantry includes Air Force rocket pilots, but these pilots are of little use at all. Whenever they get close, they will be attacked by dozens of poison darts or hidden weapons, or the impact of fire guns, or even large bombs. Ranged flywheel attack. They are no better than Wang Ling, who cannot withstand these attacks. If they touch them, they will be killed instantly. The Chrono Legionnaires are even more useless. Every time Chrono moves within the effective range, they will be hit head-on and face-to-face. It is even more difficult for other infantrymen. They cannot break through the protective shield under concentrated fire, but the killing moves fired from the protective shield will kill them if they touch them. As a result, these hundreds of thousands of infantrymen, as cannon fodder, rushed forward one after another to die. They were so densely packed that they surrounded the defensive formation, but they were unable to break through it. Of course, Wang Ling himself did not expect them to be able to break through the defensive formation. Doing so would only consume their physical strength, whether it was those who formed the defensive formation on the outside, those who kept launching big killing moves on the inside, or Li Mr. Dong himself, although they stood firm and unyielding under the attack of the army. In fact, if they continued to fight like this, their physical strength was also very serious. Although the intermediate strengthening has enhanced their physical strength, which is far beyond the reach of ordinary people, there is a limit. Under this kind of consumption, everyone in teacher Li Dong's group is worried. Humph, Wang Ling, you are such a rogue. It seems I have to use some unusual means to deal with you. Finally, after another round of Phoenix Feather was launched, teacher Li Dong became anxious. Outside their defensive formation, a large number of black vortexes began to appear, and figures wearing ancient costumes walked out of them. The game Meteor Butterfly Sword is completely different from Red Alert. There is no battle formation in which the Red Alert World Army charges, and it takes an elite route. However, although they are few in number, even ordinary guards are all very skilled in martial arts. A novice player at the beginning of the game may not be able to get through even one level without skills. However, the game world built by the system will always be more or less different from the original game. Just like the Red Alert world, the number of people will inevitably be adjusted. In it, Teacher Li Dong appears as the protagonist's assassin. In addition to the original game plot, he will inevitably experience many twists and turns in the game world. During the assassination, he will definitely have too many experiences of being besieged and counterattacked. Killed many people. Although it cannot be compared with Wang Ling's World of War, these people together are not a small number. Swish. 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 Teacher Li Dong is obviously also taking the elite route. These people originally disdained to redeem, but today they were forced to this step by Wang Ling, but they had to do so. Black vortexes appeared one after another, and ancient figures appeared one after another. Figures stepped forward, including guards and bandits, as well as a small number of people from the world, all of whom were now used as weapons for Teacher Li Dong. Kill. Before everyone could gather, Teacher Li Dong gave the order directly, and hundreds of guards and bandits who had already appeared rushed forward carrying various weapons. Due to the elite route in the game, this group of people also has considerable force. As soon as Hajime broke into the infantry army, a bloody storm was set off. Swords and swords flashed, often taking away a large number of infantry lives, and even the guards were also released. He activated his weapon's ultimate killing move and swept away the infantry in a large area. With the addition of this group of people, Teacher Li Dong and his team finally felt a little less stressed. Da-da-da. Choo-choo-choo. Oh. Well. Naturally, the infantry army would not just wait, and also launched a counterattack. Their attacks cannot break through the defensive formation, but the current group of guards and bandits do not have such strong defensive capabilities. Their close attacks with cold weapons can crush infantry, but they are no match for hot weapons at long range. Under the shooting of batches of bullets and mental flames, the number of these guards and bandits was also decreasing sharply. The forces on both sides fought fiercely together, and they were literally killed in a bloody battle. However, the hosts on both sides are still exchanging money, and the black vortex of the two forces has not been interrupted for a long time, continuously heating up this fierce battlefield. Seeing this fierce battle, Wang Ling crossed his arms and remained unmoved, but Teacher Li Dong gritted his teeth and was worried. Such a fierce battle lasted for a long time and finally came to an end. Wang Ling's side was still appearing continuously, but Teacher Li Dong's side gradually became weaker. In the end, no one was available and they could no longer exchange. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1058. An embarrassing scene has come. After such a long struggle of forces, Wang Ling's side is still vigorous, but Teacher Li Dong's side is somewhat exhausted. It's not a matter of points. Teacher Li Dong doesn't know how long it has been since he got the system. He definitely doesn't lack points. What he lacks is people. Even though the meteor butterfly sword he was bound to has been adjusted by the system, the number of people is still far from being comparable to that of the Red Alert world, and only a small number of people were killed by Teacher Li Dong. However, Teacher Li Dong took an eccentric approach and failed to control a strong force. Now the fight with Wang Ling has fallen into an embarrassing situation where no one can help him. However, Wang Ling's side still has a large number of spare soldiers that have not been used. The Seoul Empire and the Allied forces still have a large number of soldiers that can be exchanged. An even larger reserve of soldiers is the coalition forces. Now it seems that none of them have been used. It's necessary. Swish. 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 However, when the two forces fought to this point, Wang Ling did not exchange the strength of the two armies too much. After that, only more than 200 people appeared intermittently, and the black whirlpool stopped. Dive down and explode the headlights. Boom. These infantrymen still had some combat effectiveness against the miscellaneous soldiers exchanged by Teacher Li Dong before, but they were completely useless against Teacher Li Dong and his elites. As Teacher Li Dong's large-scale killing skills fell, they were all defeated in an instant. After this group of infantry, Wang Ling did not continue to exchange. Instead, he gradually fell to the ground and asked playfully, "How about it, teacher, can you still afford this style of play? If you still want to continue, I can completely drag you to death with military and sea tactics. Damn it, you scoundrel. If you dare, try fighting alone with me." Teacher Li Dong didn't speak. Instead, a guy with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks in the inner room complained. Wang Ling still had some impression of this character, who seemed to be a night owl. However, Wang Ling smiled sarcastically, "If you fight alone, you are no match. Who are you? You little bastard, you're looking for death." Night Owl became anxious, but Teacher Li Dong held him down, looked at Wang Ling, and continued to provoke, "I admit, this style of play is quite rogue, but it is not against the rules. Wang Ling, why did you stop now? I haven't failed yet, don't be careless." Wang Ling sighed, "I wanted to persuade you to surrender as soon as possible, but it seems there is no chance. In that case, come out, friends." Swish. 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 The order was finally given, and a group of people who had been impatient in the transfer station immediately jumped out of the black vortex. Sun Dehua moved his arms and complained, "Team leader, why did you call us out? Do you know how itchy my hands were in the transit room?" Erlu teased from the side, "Leader, don't worry about him. Brother who is such a tough-minded guy, he's in a hurry to die." Nonsense. Ha ha ha. Chen Tong, Gu Suanwu, and others laughed unceremoniously. Tanya got angry, grabbed Wang Ling's collar, and scolded him, "Wang Ling, your uncle, are you not willing to take the lives of our allied soldiers? I haven't seen you redeem your allied forces for so long. The troops are all from our allies." Yuri interrupted at the right time, "And the soldiers of my soul empire." "Shut up." Tanya didn't give him a chance to speak, but turned around and shouted back. Facing this hot pepper, Wang Lingna screamed, "Stop! I didn't call you out here for fun. If you continue to act carelessly like this, you will get killed." Tanya gritted her teeth and let go of her hand. In the defensive formation in the distance, Teacher Li Dong saw the scene and smiled, "Have you finally redeemed your elites?" Wang Ling said frankly, "That's right. Just because they are elites, I don't want them to die easily." "Then by exchanging now, are you sure of winning?" Teacher Li Dong sneered, suddenly grabbed the flywheel in his hand, and planned to launch a killing move from a long distance and throw it. But at this moment, tisk! A large amount of electromagnetic light suddenly burst out from the ground where he was, and he felt a tingling sensation before it even touched him. So he could only give up the attack, and instead took out his sword and turned on the defense mode. However, others were not so quick. Although there was a protective shield on the outside, Wang Ling's move was an attack from underground, directly passing through the defense layer and electrocuting everyone. Change the formation, absolutely defend. Teacher Li Dong was startled and shouted quickly. Everyone obeyed the order and quickly changed their defense mode. They endured the pain of the electric shock, jumped together in pairs, surrounded Teacher Li Dong in the middle, and started the defense mode back to back. Their protective shield only had half of it, but when put together back to back, they formed a complete protective shield, shielding the original current from the outside. It's interesting. But how long can we last with defense alone? Everyone, listen, fire suppression. Wang Ling showed a sly smile. With an order, everyone, including Tanya, took out their firearms and bombarded the protective shield from a distance. This group of people, except for Tanya and Yuri, have all undergone intermediate strengthening and changed arms. Most of them are magnetic blast infantry, and there are some SEALs. At this moment, a large amount of electromagnetic currents are concentrated and bombarded towards Teacher Li Dong's camp. The protective shield was also equipped with continuous submachine gun fire, coupled with bursts of Tanya's pistol. As soon as the fire was fired, the firepower reached the peak. Almost everyone fired at full fire, sparing no effort to bombard the protective shield. Snort. Under their bombardment, the 20 martial arts characters in Teacher Li Dong's camp were under double pressure. They were even more stressed than when they faced hundreds of thousands of soldiers charging before. No one dared to do anything. Relax, otherwise they will have no way to survive once the protective shield is broken. Even Teacher Li Dong was constantly being attacked by Wang Ling's electromagnetic attack, so he could only open the protective shield and struggle to hold on. In the current situation, it seems that the two sides are in a stalemate, but in fact, Wang Ling has the absolute advantage and is releasing electromagnetic energy calmly. Wang Ling is still admonishing, "Teacher, give up, you have no hope of winning. I don't want to. Things have been done extremely well. These people are very important to you, so killing them shouldn't be acceptable to you, right?" He meant well, but Teacher Li Dong didn't appreciate it. "Wang Ling, I'm not as mother-in-law as you, and I won't put too much emotion into virtual characters. Now that I've entered the game, I have already accepted my fate, including so do they. Even if you really kill them, you can only blame them for not being as skilled as others." Humph. When Tu Cheng heard this, he glared at Teacher Li Dong fiercely during his defense, obviously not liking hearing this. But the irony is that he is just a program and has no ability to resist Teacher Li Dong and can only accept his fate. Then there's nothing we can do. When his advice was in vain, Wang Ling sighed and glanced at Yuri. "Let's do it." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1059. Yuri glanced at Wang Ling, snorted, and complained, "I really hate it. I hate that I am just a program. You treat my soldiers of the Soul Empire as cannon fodder, and you still boss me around as a king. TCH, hurry up and get to work." "There's so much nonsense." Wang Ling rolled his eyes. He was not at all polite to this cruel king. Snort. Buzz. Yuri couldn't resist. He snorted coldly and walked to one side. He looked at the defensive formation of Teacher Li Dong's camp intently and released an extremely powerful mental shock wave. His mental power is slightly different from Wang Ling's. The shock wave's damage to physical objects is not serious, but in fact the intensity of this mental power is even higher than Wang Ling's. Previously, Wang Ling used shock waves to blast Teacher Li Dong's protective shield, which could knock him into a trance for a moment, let alone Yuri's hedging of those half-baked protective shields. Buzz. Under this violent impact, the protective shields of 10 people in the defensive formation flashed rapidly, seeming to be on the verge of collapse, and the powerful spiritual power penetrated directly through the protective shields and invaded these people. 10 people, their brains suddenly felt a strong dizziness. Tisk tisk. Chug tug tug. Bang bang bang. Click. 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 Sun Dehua, Tanya, and others seized this opportunity and concentrated on attacking the protective shield of these 10 people. Under the suppression of powerful firepower, the already unsustainable protective shield was finally forcibly broken. As soon as the protective shield was broken, the safety of the 10 people was immediately lost. A large number of electromagnetic attacks, bullets from submachine guns and pistols came one after another, and the 10 people were reduced to ashes in almost the blink of an eye. As the saying goes, no matter how good your skills are, you are still afraid of kitchen knives. People in the martial arts world are indeed very powerful. Even Wang Ling was crushed by Teacher Li Dong in close combat. However, when the distance is extended, cold weapons are almost naturally suppressed by hot weapons. Even if there is a protective cover, it will not be effective under fire suppression. As Wang Ling said, this battle was not equal from the beginning. Cut. Seeing these 10 elite subordinates being killed with his own eyes, teacher Li Dong's expression instantly dropped. He was obviously very distressed and dissatisfied, but he still gritted his teeth and persisted. At this time, Wang Ling stopped Yuri, who was about to continue releasing shock waves, and persuaded him from a distance, "Teacher, admit defeat. The outcome has been decided. You have already lost this fateful battle." "Wang Ling, I haven't lost yet, don't act like you have a chance to win," but teacher Li Dong was still stubborn. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh, "Why bother, teacher? Are you willing to kill all your subordinates? In that case, I'll make some big news." Snapped. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Ling snapped his fingers, and several large black vortexes suddenly appeared next to him. I thought some giant was going to come out of it, but unexpectedly, the sound of an engine came from inside, and then tanks appeared one after another. And these tanks are not simple, they are all elite-level apocalypse tanks, and 10 of them have been launched one after another. The real world is different from the red alert world. If these 10 elite apocalypse tanks were fully fired, they would be enough to sink the entire island. Wang Ling went too far this time. The appearance of these 10 apocalypse tanks really shocked teacher Li Dong. These are tanks. And they are elite-level apocalypse tanks. How can we fight against tanks with martial arts kung fu? After a while of surprise, teacher Li Dong came back to his senses and became confused. No, virtual life has materialized, and only living creatures can be redeemed. Why can you redeem it for a tank? Wang Ling smiled and said, "You don't understand this, teacher. In the red alert world, most tanks are not dead objects, but individuals with independent lives, so they are also in the exchange queue." Teacher Li Dong sighed, "The system actually thinks this way? As you said, this battle was not equal from the beginning. You didn't try your best from the beginning." Wang Ling crossed his arms, put away his electromagnetic attack, and gave a ceasefire order to others. Finally, he looked at teacher Li Dong. "Yes, the battle between the system hosts actually involves a little bit of luck, and obviously, my luck is better than yours. The bound game seems to be able to restrain your martial arts. Teacher, next, we will not do anything anymore. You can try the power of these 10 apocalypse tanks first. If they are not enough, I can also add other types of tanks at any time and fight until you are satisfied and until you admit defeat." "You are such a scoundrel," teacher Li Dong gritted his teeth, as if he wanted to beat Wang Ling up. Without the suppressive firepower of Wang Ling and others, teacher Li Dong and the remaining 10 people finally relaxed a little. They quickly untied their defenses and moved their joints. Night Owl was lucky enough not to be among the 10 who were bombarded. After the event, he looked at the tank and asked, "Li Dong, what is this big iron sheet? It looks pretty tough." Teacher Li Dong glared at him, "This is a tank. It can kill people with one shot. It is 1,000 times more powerful than a fire gun. Don't be careless. If you don't handle this thing carefully, you will die." "What, so much better than the Huotong gun?" Others were also surprised. Teacher Li Dong gritted his teeth, "That's right. Success or failure depends on this one move. Let's all use the hammer killer move together and see if we can defeat all the tanks in one fell swoop." "Good. Dive down and explode the headlights. The only thing in the meteor butterfly sword that can effectively hit tanks is the hammer." At that moment, 11 people took out the hammers and jointly released the ultimate killing move, leaping 5 meters high. After a few spins, throwing 11 sledgehammers at the first apocalypse tank. Boom. Anyone who has played this game knows how terrifying the hammer's killing move is. The 11 hammers killing move was like 11 terrifying cannonballs, instantly detonating the apocalypse in front of it. Tank. However, only one was destroyed. The 11 rolling shockwaves swept away, but did not cause much damage to the other 9 Apocalypse tanks. Seeing this scene, Wang Ling couldn't help but clicked his tongue twice. The power of the hammer is indeed not limited. However, teacher, it seems that your subordinates cannot use unlimited killing moves like you, right? Moreover, my tanks are not just targets. Defense. After listening to Wang Ling's words, teacher Li Dong's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly shouted and put up the protective shield together with the remaining people. Boom, boom, boom. Boom boom boom. Click. 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 Well. However, the explosive shells of the Apocalypse tank were bombarded, and the protective shield could not resist at all. Dozens of shells exploded at once, and the entire island trembled. The strong destructive power almost immediately shattered all the protective shields. The aftermath of the impact hit out, and the remaining 10 martial arts characters were killed in an instant. Even teacher Li Dong's protective shield was broken, and he flew out in a panic. Tisk tisk. After he landed, a large amount of electromagnetic energy emerged from the ground, which scared teacher Li Dong and quickly put up a protective shield. However, these electromagnetic currents did not attack him. Instead, they connected with each other around his protective shield, and finally formed the shape of a cage. At the same time, 9 Apocalypse tanks came forward, surrounded teacher Li Dong in 9 directions, and aimed their dark muzzles at him. Sun Dehu and others followed closely, showing their weapons and aiming at teacher Li Dong's head. The winner has been decided. Teacher, you lose. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1060. The winner has been decided. Teacher, you lose. A faint voice came from Wang Ling's mouth, directly announcing the outcome of this fateful battle. Ha 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 ha. The younger generation is to be feared, the younger generation is to be feared. Teacher Li Dong, who sacrificed all his subordinates and was defeated in embarrassment, not only did not show any signs of depression, but looked up to the sky and laughed several times. Wang Ling was puzzled and calmly came to the electromagnetic cage and asked, "What, teacher, do you want to continue fighting now?" What a slap in the face. Teacher Li Dong rolled his eyes and swore, "Look at these cannon muzzles. Whenever I make any move, I will be stunned as soon as the cannon is fired. And these people around me also. Nothing is simple, and you are watching eagerly from the side. What else can I do? It would have been better to admit defeat earlier, and it's been so troublesome." Wang Ling glared at him angrily, and then the magnetic and electric cage also came into contact. But Tanya was a little worried. "Hey, Wang Ling, don't be careless. What if he has some plan to trick you?" Wang Ling shook his head and was very sure. "Don't worry, it won't happen." "That's what you said, don't blame me for being tricked." Tanya couldn't do anything to Wang Ling. She turned her guns under the command and inserted it into her waist. Sun Dehu and others also consciously put away their weapons, and the 9 Apocalypse tanks also moved out of the way. Teacher Li Dong was not ignorant. He released his defense at the same moment, rubbed his swollen arm, and complained, "You are so ruthless. In order to deal with me, you even used tanks." Wang Ling was also wronged. "Please, teacher, if you hadn't refused to admit defeat, why would I have done this? And here we are, only 10 Apocalypse tanks. If I exchanged all the tanks and infantry that can be exchanged, it's enough to subvert the whole world. In the Red Alert world, I am now a general. Just think about how many troops I can redeem with my authority." "Hey, such a young general? It seems that you have been fighting hard in the game world these days." "I lost this battle unjustly." Ha ha ha. Teacher Li Dong smiled, not caring about his defeat at all. After he left, Wang Ling asked, "Okay, don't be happy, teacher, can you tell me now, what do you know?" "That's natural. But it's too messy here. Let's find a more comfortable place." Teacher Li Dong waved his hand and led Wang Ling to the valley area on the edge of the island, and found some flat boulders to sit down on. Wang Ling also followed closely, and the others followed suit, but the 9 apocalypse tanks were put on the spot, waiting in a row. After everyone sat down, teacher Li Dong asked, Wang Ling, first of all, let me ask you a question. How did you feel after getting the extra-dimensional system? Wang Ling closed his eyes and thought for a moment before answering. At first, I was wary, because I didn't know what it was, whether it was a prank or a supernatural event. Later, I was surprised. I tried to contact the other dimensional system, but I was really surprised by the incredible nature of the system. I was shocked. However, after the surprise, I became vigilant again. Pies in the sky will not fall, and the extra-dimensional system was sent out for no reason. I don't know why. I am very afraid that because of this system, I will pay more than I can bear. The price to pay. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that. You are quite sensitive. Teacher Li Dong praised him, and then asked, if you are so vigilant, why do you continue to use the system to start strengthening? You are not afraid that the higher the strengthening, the more you pay? Will the price be higher? Wang Ling nodded. Afraid, of course I'm afraid. But I did feel a little addicted at the time, so I started to try frequently. While personally experiencing the world of Red Alert, I could also strengthen it, earn points, and exchange them for cash. But then, teacher, you came in our school, we were informed about the dual nature of the so-called deep hypnosis, and I suddenly realized that I was playing with fire. Looking back, I actually thought it was a game several times and almost got killed. At that time, I was scared, and while I was scared, I also thought about giving up and living my life. However, I was stimulated by the death of the instructor, and with passion and hatred, I returned to the battlefield of the Red Alert world without hesitation. Cut. Tanya seemed very uncomfortable when she heard this, as if she felt Wang Ling's murderous intention towards her at that time. However, Wang Ling ignored her and continued, before returning to the battlefield, I went through an ideological struggle and specially received the intermediate enhancement. This system is not simple, and it hides unknown secrets. I don't know what results are waiting in the future. Instead of giving up on ourselves, we should seize this opportunity to strengthen ourselves first. When we are strong enough, we can cope with all kinds of things that may happen in the future. By the way, we can compete and have fun in the game world, and we can also get to know this group of comrades around me. It was also a good experience for us. He Sundahu and Erlu made a silly sound when they heard this. After hearing this, teacher Li Dong also laughed. I remember that you called me specifically and asked me if I was bitten by a dog in deep hypnosis and if I should get a rabies vaccine in real life. Now it seems that you were assigned to the police dog training place during that transition period, right? Woof woof. Speaking of this, Xiao He in the transfer station barked twice, and seemed to still remember the incident of biting Wang Ling, while Wang Ling showed an embarrassed expression. After making a joke, teacher Li Dong corrected his attitude and his tone became a little more serious. You did make a very right choice back then. The different dimensional system will not be easily known to outsiders. Have you ever thought about what will happen to you if you choose to give up? Wang Ling nodded. Either my memory is erased, or I am completely wiped out. That's right, teacher Li Dong replied, there are only two outcomes, but in fact, the latter is more likely. Wang Ling felt a chill in his heart. Although he had guessed it before, he was still frightened when he heard teacher Li Dong's affirmation. If he hadn't been able to cheer up and continue, I'm afraid he would be dead now, right? After barely adjusting his mentality, Wang Ling asked again, what is going on with the different dimensional system? Why are we given such a system that defies heaven? Speaking of this, teacher Li Dong sighed, with a cold look on his face. Have you ever heard of raising gu? Raising gu, Wang Ling frowned, as if he had caught some clue. Teacher Li Dong explained, put all the poisons in the same container and fight each other. In the end, only one remains. That poison is the poison, and it will eventually be controlled by the person who raises the poison. You mean? Wang Ling's expression suddenly changed, and his spine felt a little chilly. Teacher Li Dong nodded, yes, our identities are actually no different from goo insects. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1061. Wang Ling didn't reply, but his face was very ugly. He had thought about many possibilities, what the purpose of the existence of the different dimensional system was, he had thought about the good aspects, and also thought about the bad endings, but nothing happened. I thought that the conclusion coming from Teacher Li Dong would be so terrifying. Teacher Li Dong continued to add, there will be no charity for no reason in this world, and there will be no pie in the sky, let alone something as against the heavens as a different dimensional system. The existence of the system itself is a conspiracy, and the system the real master controls everything from behind, and we are just chess pieces. Randomly spread the different dimensional system, allowing each host to choose different channels to grow. In the end, after fighting, only the last one is left, who is qualified to meet the system. The real master. This routine is no different from raising goo. Wang Ling still didn't reply. In fact, he was in a state of panic that could not be calmed down for a long time. Is getting a different dimensional system a blessing or a curse? After a long silence, Wang Ling finally digested the revelations, took a few deep breaths, and then asked, Teacher, how did you know? Teacher Li Dong sneered, don't forget my profession. I am a professor of psychology. Can you hide this kind of psychology from me? To be honest with you, I got the extra-dimensional system very early. It's been 5 years. In these 5 years, in addition to using system enhancement, I have also considered many things, and I have also seen many things that you don't understand. For example, do you know how many different dimensional systems the owner of the system has spread out over the years? I don't know, how much? I don't know the specific number, but from what I know and have been in contact with, besides you and me and Zheng Long, there are 5 more. 5. So many, Wang Ling was surprised, then where are they now? What do you think? Teacher Li Dong looked at Wang Ling with a half-smile. After meeting his gaze, Wang Ling suddenly realized, are they all dead? Teacher Li Dong nodded, yes. Otherwise, how could there be only the 2 of us in the fateful battle? Just like how I found you, I have held public courses in many places and deliberately promoted the theory of deep hypnosis. I used this as bait and indeed caught some people who were interested in this theory. After gaining professional knowledge, I have indeed discovered 2 hidden hosts besides you. In addition, I also have my own information channels and have inquired about many strange and weird things in the world. After investigation, I have also located 3 hidden hosts. Teacher Li Dong said leisurely, the distribution of these 5 hosts has no pattern at all. It can be said to be random, and their occupations are also different. As for the final cause of their death, 3 of them died mysteriously and suddenly while sleeping. I think you should be able to guess the cause of death. Wang Ling nodded. It was obvious that he was killed in the game world, and as a result, he also died in the real world. Or, it may be that the enhancement failed during advanced enhancement. As for the other 2, speaking of the other 2, Teacher Li Dong showed a cold look. When Wang Ling saw him like this, he couldn't help but narrowed his eyes, like Zheng Long, was he killed by you yourself? That's right, Teacher Li Dong admitted bachelorly. Wang Ling was puzzled, why? Just because of the fateful battle, so we have to deal with them in advance. Not entirely, Teacher Li Dong explained, I will deal with them in advance. The fateful battle only accounts for a small part of the reason. The more important thing is that these people have evil intentions. Have evil intentions? Yes. After I initially discovered them, I had special contact with them and learned about them through listening tests. Among these 5 hosts, 4 of them had terrible ambitions, and they regarded the other dimensional system as the tool for them to realize their ambitions. There was only one person who was not tempted and determined to be a great hero. But this person died in the game world in the end, which is sad. Teacher Li Dong sighed. Wang Ling raised his brows and was very surprised. It's so exaggerated that all 4 of them have gone astray. Yes, this is the dark side of human nature. In fact, there is darkness hidden in everyone's heart, it's just a difference. Under the constraints of morality and law, most people may not recognize this dark side throughout their lives. Show it, but what if the ability is strong enough to break through the constraints of morality and law? Teacher Li Dong initiated soul torture. But Wang Ling couldn't answer this question at all. He just stared at Teacher Li Dong intently, waiting for the next article. Teacher Li Dong sneered a few times before answering. Maybe many people have imagined that if they get superpowers, they will be like a superhero like in the movie, but in fact this idea itself is childish. Human nature, once evil is obtained, the kind of power that is powerful enough to break through moral and legal constraints, more people will actually become the villains played in the movie, breaking through the bottom line and amplifying dark desires. Coincidentally, the other dimensional system is enough to provide people with this kind of power and ability, so it is not surprising that 4 out of 5 people cannot withstand the temptation and go astray. After a pause, Teacher Li Dong looked at Wang Ling and said, including your classmate Zheng Long, he is also in this group. When he took the initiative to provoke you, I followed the clues to find his lair. In fact, he did not take action immediately. Instead, I investigated for a few days. As a result, I discovered that he was secretly gathering a large number of monsters in the game world, planning to give the world a surprise. So, you sent out your elite subordinates to annihilate him just before me, and left a letter of challenge to me. That's right. Hearing this, Wang Ling finally understood the general idea of the matter. After a moment of confusion, he took a different approach and asked, so, teacher, who do you belong to? Teacher Li Dong smiled mysteriously, I neither want to be a villain nor a superhero, but I chose another path. Which way? I want to support a superhero. That's right. The choices and final results of those 5 people made me very disappointed. During this period, I got to know you through a public class in your school. After investigation, I confirmed that you are the other one. Host, so I have been observing you for a long time. But the results of the observation made me dumbfounded. Among all the people, you are completely different. You neither want to be a superhero nor a villain to break through the bottom line. You have great abilities, but you only want to be an ordinary person. You are really wasting your abilities. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1062. Wang Ling twitched the corners of his mouth vigorously and was embarrassed for a long time before protesting, I just want to be an ordinary person and live an ordinary life. What's so strange about this? Why is it so different? But Teacher Li Dong asked with a half smile, do you think that once you are in the game, you can live a normal life? Wang Ling fell silent. This issue is indeed difficult. The existence of the extra-dimensional system is a conspiracy in itself. In fact, his life has changed since the system broke into his life. Teacher Li Dong added, life is inherently out of control, and there are very few people who can be truly free. What's more, you have a different dimension system forcibly added to your body. Your future will be completely different from that of ordinary people. It's the same. Sometimes, you don't want to make a choice, but you are forced to make a choice. And I hope you can make the right choice and not go astray. So, you have always had this idea, so you have been advising me intentionally or unintentionally a long time ago. Wang Ling also figured out something. From the first time Professor Li Dong met Wang Ling, he had advised him, after you gain enhanced abilities under deep hypnosis, remember to keep your heart and don't make any outrageous and wrong decisions. Otherwise, you will make one wrong step and the next will wait for you, will be an endless abyss. At that time, Wang Ling did not understand this sentence and did not understand what teacher Li Dong was referring to. Only now did Wang Ling know the good intentions of this old professor. Wait. However, knowing that he knew it, Wang Ling still had doubts. Teacher, you said that your purpose is to support a superhero, and you do not hesitate to kill other hosts in advance for this purpose, then why don't you do it yourself? Teacher Li Dong smiled. Before answering this question, let me ask you first. According to the system's regulations, as long as a host completes all enhancements and plots, its information will be exposed to other hosts. Why did you never got a message from me in the system? Wang Ling really guessed this question in advance. Is it because you haven't injected high-level strengthening agents and haven't completed all the strengthening? That's right. Teacher Li Dong replied, I am old. Even though I have been trained in the game world, my body and bones are not as good as those of you young people. I really have no hope of completing the 20% success rate of advanced enhancement. If trying hastily will only lead to death. Even if I can't complete advanced enhancement, where do I have the qualifications to be a hero? The future belongs to you young people. All I can do is support from behind and be a guide. People. After Wang Ling heard this, he was even more speechless. Teacher Li Dong's decision was really helpless, but in the midst of helplessness, it was also commendable. He was willing to be a green leaf to set off the red flowers. When Wang Ling sighed, Teacher Li Dong also said to himself, in fact, in my opinion, your alternative choice also symbolizes that you have no ambition and will not go astray, so after several disappointments, almost all my hopes have been placed on you. Even though you are a general in the Red Alert world, how much intrigue is there in the Red Alert world? Being in the ivory tower of the university, what do you think about it? I am still a little naive when thinking about the complexity of this society. There are many mistakes that have been exposed on the way to growing up, which makes me worry a lot. On the one hand, I will pretend to remind you from time to time. On the other hand, I have to use my channels and even do it myself to help you solve the troubles that may be exposed so that you can grow up smoothly. A few days ago, you were in a bar in the same city. I made a big fuss and used hypnosis to seemingly eliminate all future troubles, but in fact I also left behind identity videos. As a last resort, I even sneaked into the monitoring room directly and destroyed all the computers that stored the surveillance. And last time I didn't lie to you about being hospitalized, you did leave a lot of clues, and I helped you deal with them. Wang Ling was surprised and a little grateful when Teacher Li Dong said this. It turned out that without even realizing it, Teacher Li Dong had helped him so much in private. Teacher Li Dong was still talking. In fact, I don't know how many hosts there are in the different dimensional system. A few days ago, I was busy with the work at hand, but suddenly I received a message about you from the system. From that moment on, I knew that the fateful battle was approaching. However, I did not find you immediately to make a fight. Instead, I borrowed your hand to fish, hoping to lure out other hosts. I concluded that the other hosts had received the call. If there is news, they will definitely try their best to contact you and test you, even if they have not completed the enhancement and plot. And in the end, only Zheng Long showed up, so I guess that the owner of the system may not have been able to do anything during this period. There is no search for a new host. After Zheng Long is eliminated, the only hosts for the system are you and me. A battle of fate. When Wang Ling heard this word, he always felt it was harsh. He stared at Teacher Li Dong and asked, Teacher, what will be the result if we lose the fateful battle? Teacher Li Dong, who has always been good at talking, suddenly got stuck when faced with this problem. Judging from his embarrassed expression, he either didn't know, or there was no good outcome. Thinking of this, Wang Ling couldn't help but get a little angry. Teacher, who said that when two hosts meet together, they must fight to the death? Can't we unite and deal with the system master together? No, because it's not allowed. Not allowed. Not allowed by whom? Even if we really unite, so what? Who is the master of this system? Why does he have such a heaven-defying thing as a different dimensional system? Why do he set the rules? Do we have to comply? At this moment, encouraged by the anger in his heart, Wang Ling couldn't help but ask what he had been holding in his heart for too long. Pa. 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 What a teacher-student friendship. I was a little touched when I saw it. Teacher Li Dong didn't have time to answer, but rhythmic applause suddenly came from outside the two of them, along with a sarcastic remark. Click. Tisk tisk. This sound was so sudden that no one at the scene noticed when the sound was approaching. At that moment, everyone became alert, clenched their weapons, and looked in the direction of the source of the sound. I saw a figure appearing more than 10 meters away in this direction. Although it was still dark on the Yevali Island, Wang Ling used his night vision to see this person clearly. He was dressed in white clothes, with a white face and no beard, a Chinese character face, a straight nose and a square mouth. This image fell in Wang Ling's eyes, but he was shocked for a while. Uncle He. Isn't it? Except for the fact that his clothes are different from Uncle He's and that he has a physical body, the man who walked over is exactly the same as Uncle He, the artificial intelligence brain. When this person heard this title, he laughed unceremoniously. Uncle He. Ha ha ha, does this guy He Ming think that he is really a human being because he has human emotions? He is just a person modeled after my image. It's just an artificial intelligence brain, but you want my host to call him uncle. Huh, Wang Ling was secretly horrified. Who is this person? Uncle He was actually created in his image. In the midst of shock, this person identified himself. Let me introduce you. I am the real master of the different dimensional system, and my name is Bai Ming. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1063. What? Hearing his self-introduction, Wang Ling, Teacher Li Dong, and even Sun Dehua, Tanya, and others were all shocked. The real owner of the system showed up at this time. The one who was most surprised was Wang Ling. He had made many assumptions about the appearance of the owner of the system, but he never expected that this owner was exactly the same as Uncle He. Uncle He's real name turned out to be He Ming. This was the first time Wang Ling heard it. Looking at Bai Ming, who had a stern smile on his face and looked exactly like Uncle He, Wang Ling felt both familiar and unfamiliar. It seemed to be the influence of the relationship between the host and the real owner. Wang Ling always felt that Bai Ming was just standing here. It can give him a strong sense of oppression, which makes him frightened and alert at the same time. Uncle He, is he really your real master? Although the fact was before his eyes, Wang Ling still wanted to confirm, and he quickly called out to Uncle He in his head. However, Uncle He didn't answer at all. He just closed his eyes in the transit and seemed to be struggling. His state was very strange. I called twice more, but still got no response. This is the first time Wang Ling has seen Uncle He's inexplicable state, and this seems to have provided the answer. Of course, Teacher Li Dong was equally surprised. He held a sword in front of him in a defensive posture and asked, "Are you the owner of the system? Did you give us all our systems?" Bai Ming smiled and nodded, "Yes, I personally delivered it to you and left an image of my consciousness." Speaking of this, Wang Ling suddenly remembered that when he obtained the different dimensional system, he did dream of a white figure. It seemed that this was the consciousness image Bai Ming said. Teacher Li Dong frowned and continued to ask, Did you hear the conversation we just had? Now that the fateful battle has been decided, is that why you showed up? Bai Ming's smile gradually turned cold. That's right. As a host, you are quite capable, and your analysis is quite reasonable. However, as the loser of the fateful battle, you are already a gift if you are still alive. Where did you come from? So many words. After finishing speaking, Bai Ming suddenly waved his hand lightly. He didn't know what happened. Teacher Li Dong was suddenly controlled. He flew half a meter into the air and his body became translucent. Teacher Li Dong in this state is not dead, but he seems to be locked in a unique space on the other side. He is constantly slashing with his sword in it, and even using his ultimate killing move cannot break out. There seems to be invisible things around him. The barrier locked him inside, and not even a single sound could be heard. This scene made Wang Ling tremble all over. What kind of terrifying ability is this? Bai Ming did such a horrible thing casually, but as if nothing happened, he clasped his ears. The troublemaker is finally quiet. What did you do to Teacher Li Dong? Wang Ling asked vigilantly, controlling his trembling body. But Bai Ming just glanced at him. It's nothing, I just locked him up for a while to shut him up. Now is not the time to deal with him. After speaking, he even glanced at Sun Dehua, Tanya, and the others. The group immediately sat on pins and needles, holding their weapons tightly and preparing for battle. It is strange to say that they are all programs redeemed from the different dimensional system, but facing Bai Ming, the real master of the system, they are full of hostility. But Bai Ming did not target them. He looked away casually and explained lazily, originally, I was thinking not to show up so soon after the fateful battle is over, so that you can fully experience the victory. I wanted to take pleasure in this world and let myself go wild. But I didn't expect that you didn't kill Li Dong. Instead, the two of them talked for a long time, and there was a strong tendency to unite. I couldn't sit still anymore, so I left early. It just so happens that you also have many questions, and I can answer them for you here. Sure enough, alliances between hosts are not allowed, that's what it's about. It can be said that the owner of the system has been observing them all the time. Whenever there is a trend of alliance, he will show up and forcibly interrupt it just like now. But this time it was different. The fateful battle was over after all. The real master showed up. In addition to interrupting the conversation between Wang Ling and Teacher Li Dong, he also did what he should do in the future. Wang Ling didn't answer him, but just watched with vigilance. Uncle He struggled for a moment in that weird state, and found that he couldn't break free, so he simply gave up. He sat down and looked at Wang Ling and Bai Ming, but he didn't know if he could hear the outside world in this state. Drink a cup of hot tea. The tea in your world really has some flavor. I like it very much. Bai Ming sat back as if he were familiar with it, and an illusory recliner suddenly appeared under him. With a wave of his hand, a stone platform appeared in front of Wang Ling, with a complete set of tea sets on it. Bai Ming, on the other hand, poured tea leisurely and skillfully like a tea master, and finally sifted out 2 cups of pure tea, one for each person. Wang Ling was not surprised by this process at all. After all, in the different dimensional system, even programs can be exchanged for physical objects and summoned to the real world. As the owner of the system, it is not surprising that Bai Ming made tables, chairs, and tea sets. Picking up the tea cup, he took a decent sip and then put it down. Wang Ling then asked, now let's talk about it. Who are you? Why do you have such a heaven-defying thing as a different dimensional system? Oh, you, I put down my posture to pour you tea, but it's so wasteful. Bai Ming was obviously dissatisfied. However, these are irrelevant. After Bai Ming complained, he said directly, you and I are not from the same dimension at all. Huh? What do you mean? Wang Ling didn't understand. Bai Ming smiled and said, you are a person in the 3-dimensional space, but I am alive in the four-dimensional space, a different dimensional system, and a black technology in the four-dimensional space. Fourth-dimensional space. Wang Ling was completely confused when he heard this word, and teacher Li Dong seemed to be able to hear their conversation, and at the same time he looked at Bai Ming with a surprised expression. Bai Ming seemed to have some trouble explaining this issue. He pondered for a while before asking, "Do you know what the end point of science is?" "What?" Wang Ling didn't even bother to guess. Bai Ming also answered directly, "The end point of science is theology." Theology. That's right. When technological civilization is so powerful that lower civilizations cannot understand it, looking up to higher civilizations is like looking up to gods, and every move seems to be announcing the will of gods. There are also various myths in your world. In addition to the imaginative compilation of ancient people, in fact, more is due to the inability to understand, so theology was produced, Bai Ming explained leisurely. Wang Ling can understand this. To make a simple comparison, just as ancient people cannot understand modern technology, it is also difficult for modern people to understand future technology. And even future technology may be difficult to understand when faced with higher-level civilizations. People from higher-level civilizations are like godlike existences to lower-level civilizations. There is nothing wrong with saying that the end point of science is theology. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1064. After simply digesting the comparison, Wang Ling looked at Bai Ming sharply and said clearly, "What do you mean? I am a person in the three-dimensional space and you are alive in the four-dimensional space. In my opinion, you should be a god." Bai Ming did not deny it, took a few sips of tea, and said with a smile, "That's pretty much what it means. Of course, not only you, but I am a god to the entire dimension. You and I don't belong to the same world at all." Cut. This arrogant statement made Wang Ling furious. However, facing the owner of the different dimensional system, Wang Ling had to suppress his anger at this stage. He took 2 deep breaths and continued to ask, "What kind of space is the four-dimensional space?" At this question, Bai Ming put down the teacup, glanced at Wang Ling, tapped the tea set gently, then moved his finger to the stone table and tapped a water point. "What is this?" "Tea," Wang Ling replied without thinking. Bai Ming rolled his eyes and corrected, "I'm explaining dimensions to you, don't talk to me. This is a point, which represents zero-dimensional space." Zero-dimensional space. Yes, zero-dimensional space is just a point, with no length, width, and height. This is the lowest space. After Bai Ming explained the zero-dimensional space, he pressed his hand on a point in the tea and moved it more than 10 centimeters to one side. "Tell me more, what is this?" Wang Ling was also excited. "Line. According to the order of your explanation, this should represent one-dimensional space, right?" "That's right," Bai Ming replied, "countless zero-dimensional spaces and countless points form a line. This is a one-dimensional space with infinite length but no width and height." As he spoke, he got some more water and wiped it in one direction based on the line, soaking a piece of stone surface. This time, Bai Ming didn't ask Wang Ling anymore, and said directly, "This is a surface, a two-dimensional space composed of countless lines. It has length and width, but no height. I think you should be very familiar with this concept. It's easy to understand. There is also a term for two-dimensional animation in your world. In fact, the pictures that appear on the screen can be understood as two-dimensional space." Wang Ling nodded slightly. The current explanation was not difficult to understand. Boom. Immediately afterwards, Bai Ming suddenly slapped the surface of the water, causing the tea on the tea set to splash. With this shot, Bai Ming had unconsciously constructed a three-dimensional shadow. As he raised his hand, a blue square surface appeared under his hand. Immediately afterwards, Bai Ming turned his hand and pulled up the corner of the light plate with his index finger. The entire square light surface increased in height, and finally turned into a virtual shadow of a blue cube. After the cube was formed, Bai Ming explained, "This should be the best for you to understand, because you live here, three-dimensional space. On the basis of the two-dimensional space, the height is extended. If it extends infinitely, there will be infinite space, such as the infinite universe." Wang Ling continued to nod, which was basically unnecessary to understand. But then, something incomprehensible came. After entering the three-dimensional space, Bai Ming continued to move and randomly drew a line on a point of the cube. With the appearance of this line, the originally upright cube has changed. One end of the line is connected to the other endpoints, forming an extremely irregular polyhedral shape. Moreover, this shape is not fixed yet, because the extra line is constantly moving under Bai Ming's swing, and the shape of the polyhedron is also changed accordingly. This is the four-dimensional space I am in. On the basis of the three-dimensional space, there is an additional time dimension, which greatly changes the face of the entire world. It is essentially different from the three-dimensional space, and it is also much higher than the three-dimensional space. Three-dimensional space, the technological civilization in it, is also more advanced than three-dimensional space, Bai Ming explained proudly. Regarding the introduction of four-dimensional space, some people say that this is wrong. It is impossible for a timeline to constitute a four-dimensional space, but in fact, we in the three-dimensional world do not have a definitely correct statement about what the four-dimensional space is composed of, so don't worry about right or wrong, just have a framework for understanding. Four-dimensional space. Wang Ling looked at this unpredictable four-dimensional space, his brows furrowed as if they were 25 or 80,000. He really couldn't understand such a space. Not only him, but even teacher Li Dong was confused. He stared blankly, thinking hard, but it was impossible to imagine. Tanya and others, who were listening silently and not daring to speak, were also confused. Although they were originally products of four-dimensional space technology, this product was based on the three-dimensional world after all. For the higher four-dimensional space, they can't imagine it either. And Bai Ming didn't care about their current confusion. He stretched out his fingers as if fascinated, drew a line on one endpoint, connected it with other endpoints, and formed a more complex shape as he moved. This is the five-dimensional space, a higher space than ours. But as I said before, it is difficult for lower civilizations and lower spaces to understand higher civilizations and spaces. For the five-dimensional space, it is actually even we are just imagining and speculating, and we don't know much more than you do. Some people say that this extra line is speed, some say it is temperature, and some say it is other concepts, but there is no actual conclusion. Bai Ming explained leisurely, and after he finished speaking, another line automatically extended from this complex shape and connected with other endpoints to form a more complex shape. Before he could explain, another line was drawn, then another, and then another, until the entire cube was connected and surrounded into a sphere, and then it stopped. At this time, Bai Mingke sighed and said to himself, according to scientific theory, there will be six-dimensional space and seven-dimensional space. In each dimension of space, there will be a higher level of civilization, mastering with even more amazing technology. Some advanced civilizations are capable of traveling across the universe and interstellar travel. Some advanced civilizations have truly broken through the limits of life and become immortal, and some advanced civilizations have even achieved breakthroughs to an unimaginable level. Create life, celestial bodies, and even the universe at will. For us, that kind of top-level civilization is really like a god. When talking about these high-level civilizations, Bai Ming's face was full of longing, and he was obviously very obsessed with that kind of high-level civilization. But after the longing, he quickly returned to reality, shook his head and said, "Of course, we can't be sure whether these spaces really exist or whether there are really those super high-level civilizations. After all, with our abilities, there is no way to access higher dimensional spaces. However, since four-dimensional spaces exist, then higher dimensional spaces may actually exist. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1065. Wang Ling didn't speak for a while. In fact, he was completely confused. Break through the limits of life and become immortal? Create life, celestial bodies, and even the universe at will? What a terrible civilization this is. The pinnacle of science is theology. Under this hypothesis, it seems to be even more reasonable. Hoo-hoo. After being confused for a while, Wang Ling took 2 deep breaths and forced himself to calm down. He looked at Bai Ming with questions and scrutiny in his eyes. Now I am too lazy to understand those hypothetical advanced civilizations. I am just curious. What is it really like in the four-dimensional space? Does everyone in it have superpowers? What kind of life do you live every day? Haha, you have a lot of problems. Bai Ming laughed, but did not answer directly. However, there is no need for me to tell you this. Life in the three-dimensional space cannot survive in the four-dimensional space. It is even difficult to understand the four-dimensional space. There is no point in knowing this. At the same time, according to the theory, life in high-dimensional space cannot cross the limitations of dimensional space and go to low-dimensional space. Although in theory, high-dimensional space can absolutely crush low-dimensional space. For example, you people in three-dimensional space can move to low-dimensional space at any time. The hearts of creatures in two-dimensional space are removed, but that is just a theory. In fact, you cannot confirm the existence of creatures in two-dimensional space at all, and you cannot touch two-dimensional space at all. Having said this, Wang Ling narrowed his eyes. Life in high-dimensional space cannot go to low-dimensional space? Then how did you get here? Bai Ming smiled and said nothing, but a faint light suddenly flashed on Wang Ling's wrist. After seeing it, Wang Ling suddenly realized, is it because of the different dimensional system? Bai Ming then nodded and said, yes. The theory is relative and based on certain conditions. High-dimensional space can indeed crush low-dimensional space, but it is not completely impossible to travel to low-dimensional space. All of this is it must be based on sufficiently developed science and technology. Why can't you touch the two-dimensional space? It's because your technological civilization is still far behind. After defeating Wang Ling's three-dimensional space, Bai Ming became narcissistic, but our four-dimensional space is different. The technological civilization is a level higher than yours. Of course, if it is only one level, it is still impossible. To freely travel through the three-dimensional space, we need to use tools, which are the different dimensional systems. The original name of the system is actually called the Lord God system, but it is in the three-dimensional space. In order to facilitate your understanding, I took the initiative and changed the name to different dimensional system. Dimensional system. After a pause, Bai Ming continued to explain, this system, in our four-dimensional space, is a feat of creation. It is a complete black technology. The creation technology is hidden by various forces, and only a few people can possess it. This is used to strengthen several bodies and expand power. Of course, during use, some people in the organization were surprised to find that this system can actually connect to the three-dimensional space. With the help of the system, one can freely travel through the three-dimensional world, and the four-dimensional space is retained by the system. Part of the ability. Wang Ling didn't reply, but looked at the interdimensional system on his wrist in shock. I have been using the extra-dimensional system for so long, but I never expected that this system would have such a big impact. However, Wang Ling has personally experienced the power of the different dimensional system. If it were not for such a big background, it would not be worthy of the power of the system. After being stunned, Wang Ling asked again, since the system is so unbelievable, why do you still distribute it to us randomly? What do you want to do in our three-dimensional space? Bai Ming smiled proudly, to rule. Rule. That's right. As I said, in high-dimensional space, technological civilization is enough to crush low-dimensional space. For three-dimensional space, we should be gods and should be ruled by us. So after discovering the master god system after the miraculous effect of, we were divided into two groups as a whole. One group advocates domination, using the main god system to enter the low-dimensional space, and letting each kata rule a space world to demonstrate the majesty of the gods. Of course, there are also some diehards who advocate develop naturally without interfering with life in the three-dimensional space. And I belong to the former. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes and was not interested in this statement. Ruling thoughts? That was the feudal thought of ancient China. With the advancement of science and technology and culture, it has now transitioned to modern society. However, the fourth-dimensional space jumped to a more advanced civilization with more advanced technology, and actually jumped back to the ruling ideology. Bai Ming didn't care about Wang Ling's mentality. He kept a proud smile and explained in detail, in fact, using the main god system to rule the three-dimensional world has started a long time ago. Many katas have chosen their own in the plane space, a ruling organization has been established. However, we will not rule directly. Instead, we will each choose a system host who will manage it on our behalf. For the three-dimensional space world, this host is the king of the world, and we are the gods behind this host. Of course, each kata has a different temperament, and the host's growth direction is also different, so the ruling organizations established are also different. As far as I know, some hosts have a growth direction of assassination. After the guidance of the gods, an assassination organization was established in the corresponding space world, controlling the entire world in disguise from the underground. There are also hosts whose growth direction is elemental and telekinetic. According to your words, they are magical. According to the gods, under the guidance, the host will build a magical kingdom and conquer all forces through conquests. Some are war type, forming huge mercenary organizations, and some will directly launch global wars and control the world at once. However, there are also some katas who take the wrong approach. For example, there is a powerful lunatic named Dai Huang in my organization. He does not select hosts, but only selects people with strong hatred, and directly injects strengthening agents, as well as the ones he has mastered. Give the virus mutation agent the corresponding biotechnology, and let him establish an organization to spread the biochemical virus around the world, destroy the world, and establish a zombie country full of walking dead and various powerful mutants. You guys are really crazy. Wang Ling was a little frightened when he heard this. It's hard to imagine what would happen if the organizations Bai Ming mentioned appeared in this world. Bai Ming was not very satisfied with this statement. Tisk tisk, there are only a few lunatics here and there. We are relatively normal. As gods, we have the right to do this. I was promoted to a kata in the organization relatively late and started relatively late. So this world has not yet established corresponding forces. However, I am not short of time. The process of selecting a host is also an entertainment process. I divided my interdimensional system into several equal parts and gave them to I have given you these hosts and you will grow up on your own. If any of them die young, I will continue to add them after a while until a qualified host appears and finally proves myself through the fateful battle. Is this the person you are talking about me?